This young little boy, his name is Amir.
His post as an armed security agent at an aid distribution site established by the U.S. and Israeli-backed GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Retired U.S. Army Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar said a young boy, barefoot and emaciated, approached him.
And he was walking towards us, and we thought maybe he was hurt, or maybe he was asking for some more food, because all he had in his arms was a small bag of rice, half a bag of flour, some lentils that he had picked up from the ground. He comes to me and he holds my hand and he kisses it. And as he was standing there, we were both looking at him, and he was very emaciated. He had no shoes on, probably hasn't eaten in days. And oh, by the way, when they walk 8 to 12 kilometers to get to these sites, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation mechanism provides no water. Zero. He raises his hands, and they're small, fragile. You can see bones sticking, just the bones through the skin. And he places his hands on my face, and he kissed me. And he looked at me in the eyes, and he says, "Thank you." He said it in English. "Thank you." And he collected his items, and he walked back to the group.
Moments later, Amir was shot by Israeli forces with machine guns while leaving the aid site alongside other civilians.
And the IDF were shooting at the crowd. They're shooting into this crowd. Shooting into this crowd.
Every bullet, mortar, tank round, artillery shell, or bomb that shoots, fires into, drops, or lands in Gaza comes from us, the United States, directly. They were used to kill civilians.
So this is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar and Captain Josephine Guillebeau, decorated military veterans being escorted out of the Senate for simply speaking their mind. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, 25-year veteran, Army Ranger, Special Forces. Captain Guillebeau, 17.
So this is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and I am honored to have the ability right now to have one of these great patriots here with us today. I have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar here with us. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to join the Daily Rumble and tell us about your story and what is going on. I want to start, sir, if we could, for people who don't know, what is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and how did you get involved with that?
So the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation stood up in February, March timeframe of 2025 during the end of the earlier ceasefire, not the ceasefire that we're currently in, the not real ceasefire. But in March of 2025, the ceasefire of the time ended. And simultaneous to that, the Israeli government, forcefully under Netanyahu, stopped all aid being delivered and going into Gaza, being delivered by UNRWA, the United Nations Works and Relief Agency for the occupied territories of Palestine. And with that was a host of other UN entities that could no longer go into Gaza to deliver aid. So the United States, as part of a joint plan with the Israeli military, with the IDF and the Ministry of Defense, created this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. At face value, it seemed as, well, this would be the mechanism to replace aid. We would subsume all of that mission, meaning 400 distribution sites being operated 24/7 in Gaza, with 600 trucks of aid being delivered into Gaza every single day without fail. So from March until May 26th, our first day of distribution, when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began operating, there was nothing going in. So I became involved. I recently retired in March of 2025. So here in 2 days will be my 1-year anniversary from retiring from the United States Army. So in May, I'd only been out for a few weeks, and I was not looking for contract work. I was not looking for government work. I was not looking for a paycheck or a second career. I was set with my pension and my retirement, very well set up for myself financially, and I wanted to go to school. I had taken the LSATs, and I was applying to go to school in the fall because I wanted to be a defense attorney. And then I got this phone call from UG Solutions on May 13th. And they explained to me that they were going to be the armed security apparatus for this new Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So at that time, I didn't know what the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was, never heard of them. And I also did not know what UG Solutions was, had also never heard of them. And lo and behold, both of them emerged out of the crisis of this ceasefire ending / we need to get aid and it can't be the UN. So no experience in humanitarian assistance at scale, no experience in humanitarian aid operations. And these are very intricate and complicated things. It would be like taking someone off the street and saying, hey, go fight in war without any training. It's
Right.
more complicated than just giving people food. You have to consider so many aspects of the societal needs. They called me and they said, we're going to be the ones doing this. And I said, great. That sounds like an important mission. How long do I have to think on it? And they said, well, we're leaving Thursday. And mind you, this was a Tuesday of that same week. So I was like, so as in like 24 hours or 48 hours from now? And they said, yeah, we're tightening up the final loose ends here. We need to hire a few more people. You were recommended based on your background in special operations. I got to know by tomorrow morning. This was the recruiter.
Before we move any further on this story, I do just want to say that the information that we are about to share with you is extremely sensitive. So viewer discretion is advised and this may trigger you. I also want to say thank you to today's sponsor, which is Aura.com. Because your information is most likely out there on the dark web and you probably don't even know it. But knowledge is power. If you know it's out there, you can help to get it erased. Aura.com can help you with that. And they have offered a special 14-day free trial to get your free report if your information or your loved ones is out there on the dark web. And that is only exclusive for us. So go down into the link of this video here and look for the Aura.com link 14-day free trial to find out if your information is on the dark web and learn about what you can do about it to keep you and your family safe.
So I sat down and I told myself, do I want to be a part of this monumental mission to potentially stave off a famine and feed people in need? And so I wrote down on my whiteboard here in my office and wrote it down on my notebook and just kind of thought on it. Okay, what does Tony know? Well, I know that human beings are starving. I know that no food and aid is going in, and that this company, whatever it may be, is operating on behalf of the United States and is going in there to do good, and I want to be a part of it. So I went, and that's how I got pulled into this. 2 days later, I'm on a plane to Tel Aviv, and I'm on the ground, and within days, we're operating in Gaza. And in reality, the reason all this was put together so quickly with very little oversight, but a lot of authority, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation operated and currently operates. They haven't disbanded. They just pulled out of Gaza for the time being. They are a front company, a forward-facing entity of the CIA to incorporate the CIA, Mossad, and Shin Bet into an organization to have placement in Gaza. And that goes back to the CIA's new operating methodology that when Title 10 function, so under the United States Code, you have Title 10, that's the U.S. military. You have Title 52, Title 50, that's the CIA. Title 32 is the State Department. Typically overseas, the CIA operates under the umbrella of the State Department within an embassy mission, if there is a mission. And the CIA can operate under Title 10 in times of conflict or war in certain designated areas. So those environments are going away. We're out of Afghanistan. We no longer exercise those same authorities in Iraq, where the CIA wanted to still be in the fight, so to speak. So the CIA's plan was this: let's create a humanitarian aid organization to operate under the facade of aid that puts us access and placement to then do intelligence operations. And that immediately became apparent to me when we got there. And blue badge carrying CIA agents, blue badgers are actual agents, not retirees or contractors. Blue badgers, they're installing biometric camera kits, being in part of the planning. The Mossad had agents working there. And I was like, what is this? This humanitarian assistance and humanitarian aid. This is just a facade. It's like a Trojan horse. And that's what it came to be. And I think what the world has seen from how the GHF UG Solutions operated in Gaza, that they were anything but a humanitarian aid organization. They were there to operate hand in hand with the IDF. And that became very apparent to me. I think most of the world has seen that now too.
So what you're saying is basically this is a CIA op.
Yeah, like what you would consider operations that we did in the global South in the 60s and 70s, where you form a company and the CIA operates within it. Something that seems innocuous, like Air America or Chiquita Banana Plantation, things like that. How we tried to infiltrate to for in the Bay of Pigs. We see it all over Europe. We see it all over the Middle East. They've been doing this. This is a known tactic. And when you think about how to operate in Gaza, where the entirety of Gaza, this is not like an Iraq or an Afghanistan or a Syria scenario. All of places of which I have been and operated with Joint Special Operations and the agency, and that when you look at this environment, all of Gaza is completely isolated and occupied and controlled, air, land, and sea. Quote unquote, a gringo can't really operate in Gaza without sticking out. It's not like operating in Iraq where you can blend in with U.S. forces or NATO forces or the like. It's very difficult to now do that in Afghanistan, but there's certain cutouts for that too. But when you look at operating in Gaza, it's very difficult to do that. So the best way to do that, or the only way, is to operate overtly with an underlying or a surreptitious mission. So that's exactly what the GHF was created to do. Further indication of that, the guy that had the insight, the coincidental and miraculous insight that at the time of need stood up this Safe Reach Solutions, is a guy named Phil Riley, the former Special Operations Division branch chief of the CIA. The operations director for UG Solutions, which is now UG Solutions Global X, that individual, Jennifer Counter, is a former CIA covert operations desk officer or a case officer who wrote her dissertation on how the CIA should operate in the new world as humanitarian aid organizations in order to continue to collect intelligence in areas of U.S. interest. So you start putting those pieces together. You see blue badge carrying CIA agents walking around while you're trying to do humanitarian aid. You see Mossad running around. You see Shin Bet operators coming in. You're like, this is a lot of guns, a lot of intelligence, and a lot of infidel biker gang members to be humanitarian aid. This is not what it seems to be.
So wouldn't that then directly, I mean, right now, the United States is already implicated by arming Israel in the genocide. Now, basically what you're saying is the United States is complicit in boots on the ground via the CIA in the starvation and the annihilation of an entire people.
Directly in planning, not only in complicity, but as an accomplice, knowingly, not only through our tax dollars. And what every American needs to understand is that every bullet, mortar, tank round, artillery shell, or bomb that shoots, fires into, drops, or lands in Gaza comes from us, the United States, directly. Even if they get them from Germany, a NATO ally, it's a NATO munition that we make. And also part of this armament that we give them, which is very concerning because I saw it used, is the Mark 84 guided munition, or a joint deployed aerial munition, JDAM, 2,000-pound bomb, incendiary bomb. It eviscerates, thermobaric. It eviscerates everything in its explosive path. Those aren't used to take out bunkers. They don't even explode on the ground or underneath the ground. They explode in the air. What bunkers are you taking out with that? They were used to kill civilians.
Yeah. While you were there, I mean, you had talked about how prior to the Global Humanitarian Foundation being set up, Israel blockaded all goods, food, medicine, etc. Nothing was coming into Gaza. Then it starts to trickle in a little bit once they set it up and you get there. But in your opinion, from what you saw as an eyewitness, did you see the Israeli government, the IDF, complicit with the United States, intentionally attempting to starve an entire population? Because this is something that the ICJ and the ICC are looking at right now as charges against Israel. Did you see that as an eyewitness? Can you testify to the fact that they were intentionally attempting to starve the population?
Not only can I testify to it as an eyewitness, I have video and footage and photos and evidence. And when we arrived there and I started looking at the former UN plan, I thought to myself, okay, 100 distribution sites, 600 trucks every day. I was the director of operations. So I was not only involved in, most of the contractors there were assigned to just one site. Their world existed in either a mobile team where they transported back and forth or a site team where they were on one site. They had a very scoped view of the environment. I was involved in the planning and operations and movements with the mobile teams on each site to our northern site and our southern site in both operation centers. So I was deeply involved with the IDF in the planning and the execution of this. And when we first sat down, I remember this on the 21st of May, we sat down and just kind of overwhelmed, like, how are we going to plan for this? And I dusted off my old military planner's hat and I looked at it. I said, okay, what are our resources? Let's start with that. We know what the task is. What are our resources? Oh, well, we're going to have 12 trucks. 12? It's going to be really hard to make 600 turns every day. I don't think that's possible. Okay. How about food? How much food do we have on deck to feed by either? What is the unit of measure? What is the measure of performance? Is it a box? Is it a meal? Is it a pound? Is it a ton? What are we measuring against in order to know that we're feeding the population? Well, we don't know. Like, what do you mean you don't know? This is a critical piece of information. So I had to figure that out. So in looking at putting all these pieces together, what came to be was that as we planned it and we brought this plan to this one-star general in the IDF, General Gurr, and he was a COGOT, Coordinating Office of the Government Activities of the Territories. It's an acronym, COGOT, which falls under the IDF, under the MOD writ large, kind of like a service component falls under our Department of Defense. You have the Army and then you might have another component. Same kind of idea. They belong to the military. And we briefed him on that. He was like, no. There's 4 sites only. And out of those 4 sites, you're only going to be delivering to one site per day, not multiple. And out of the 12 trucks you have, we will dictate how many trucks go in each day. And on the first few days of delivery, we were only bringing in 8, maybe 9 trucks. We saw that as a big high five. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, we came into the population and they're starving. That was intentional. The blocking of all aid going into Gaza was intentional. The continuation of restarting aid under this GHF function that was completely under the control of the IDF. And why? Because they had a written contract. So at one point, me every day grinding on these plans, convoys, building convoys every day and having them submitted to get briefed by the IDF. And they say, nope, cut half of it and do this. And I was like, okay, I'm tired of playing guess who's on second. I'm tired of playing, guess what's in my pocket. Tell me what our parameters are so I can plan instead of guessing, because you're wasting a lot of resources doing that. So I was handed a section of the contract that Safe Reach Solutions had in writing with the IDF, and it specifically said we would deliver no more than 12 trucks of aid per day, no water at all. We were delivering no water, no medical assistance, no vaccines, no baby formula. The very strict protocol on what would be delivered would be dried goods, dried rice, dried pasta, flour, cooking oil, dried fava beans, no water. And all of those things take water to cook. So I started to realize that these restrictions aren't because of the environment, aren't because of the operational risks, not because of Hamas. It's because the contract dictates that. And who wrote the contract? Israel. And who's executing the contract? The United States. And when we first started delivering the food, I noticed that a lot of it was rotten, rancid. I don't know if you ever had seen if you have rice that's kept too long in the open, it'll get mites and it gets rancid. You have to keep it preserved, or at least keep it in a way that protects it. No, all the food that the GHF was taking to feed was coming off of the leftover stock sitting outside of the Rafah crossing that had been sitting there since March when the aid was stopped. So the GHF wasn't even buying it. They were taking it from the stock that was left, and it had been picked through by people. You could tell that rats had eaten through the boxes. I have pictures and photos of this. You could see the food had that rancidy smell to it. Like it smelled moldy. And I was like, this is not making sense to me. And they couldn't provide me an answer. So one day I took it upon myself to video and film following the empty trucks back to their origin, because I didn't know where this aid was coming from. And they went to the port of Ashdod on the Israeli side. And when aid would be unloaded, the UN was there to collect what they had, but IDF soldiers would then take part of that UN aid and put a GHF sticker on it, a black sticker like you'd see on a bumper of your truck, slapped a GHF sticker on it. That's GHF aid now. So GHF was not using the $30 million grant that the U.S. State Department gave them to buy food. So I know where that money went, because that money went to buying biometric high-tech cameras, Palantir Gotham background software for analytics and biometric enrollment and data collection, all of those things that you can't put on paper when you're talking about humanitarian aid. So here's the money. Find a way to get the thing to make it look like you spent the money, but actually spend the money on doing this. And
Yeah.
I saw it every day. The advanced cameras coming in, the installation. One day we had one of the CIA support crews putting up one of the biometric enrollment cameras at site number 2, and they got shot at by the IDF.
Wow. Speaking of the IDF and the contractors who were having to work together in this situation, there's a video that appears to show contractors. You don't see the contractor actually doing the shooting, but you can hear the shooting. And then you hear another or you hear him say, "Got one, boys," or something similar to that. And then you hear some guys laughing in the background, presumably that he shot a Palestinian. Did you see that? Did you have reports of that? And was there a chain of command to report violations of international law while you were
So
there?
I was there. I filmed that. So the filming of that shooting was filmed by me on location. That was Secure Distribution Site, or SDS-4, up near the Netzarim corridor, where Palestinians in that northern sector had been really, really suffering, because they were cut off and hurt and suffering the most, other than those that were completely cut off in Gaza City, which we did not have access to. So on that day, it was the 29th of May at Secure Distribution Site 4. Distribution had finished. The distribution itself, in terms of this unleash the crowd, everybody comes up. The average distribution of food on a site for thousands of people lasted on average 8 minutes. I timed one at site number 1 where we had over 10,000 people rushing onto the site to get food, and by the time they came onto the site and they were forced off was 6 minutes and 13 seconds. So you can imagine the chaos. So distribution had completed. The site team leader, you can hear him in the video when you see the whole video, and I can send you the whole video, and you hear him say, yeah, I'm going to bring a tank up as a show of force. Why? Why do you need to bring a tank forward as a show of force to a group of unarmed, starving people who had no weapons whatsoever, no rocks, no sticks? They weren't protesting. They were simply making their way away from the site. Because remember, in these areas that they built these sites were in the operational area of Operation Gideon's Chariots. So there were minefields, there was artillery being fired, there were sniper positions. It's not just a walk in the park going back from the grocery store. And most of them are barefoot, and most of them are starving, and most of them have to walk through barbed wire and minefields. So it's not a jaunt. You have to carefully walk back. And the IDF wanted them away quicker. So this UG Solutions contractor, an American, calls up an Israeli tank. That moves up. You can hear it in the video. You can hear it moving up. You can hear it being called. And as I'm standing there looking out the gate, a contractor runs by. That's the contractor that was shooting. He runs up on top of the berm, and he's like kind of like whistling, like calling to another contractor. And then he opens up with his issued fully automatic rifle, or his carbine, like an AR-15, but fully auto. And he expends an entire magazine, 30 rounds. If you listen to that video, you can count it. There's 30 rounds that go off. And in him firing that entire magazine into the crowd of unarmed civilians, not one person was armed. He's up there and he's firing, and you can audibly hear the oh yeah, boy. And then the guy on the ground, the other contractor who was looking at him and looking out the gate, who's standing right in front of me, that contractor was in view. He's the one that says, "I think you got one." And the contractor on the berm who's shooting into that crowd responds with, "Oh, hell yeah, boy." And GHF acknowledged that incident. I had it on video. And when I showed it to the leadership there, they said, "Oh, well, I'm sure that he found something that was a threat." I said, there was no threat. No one was armed. No one was aggressive. Everybody was walking away. Their backs were turned toward us. There is no one demonstrating any aggression whatsoever. These were not like after people got their food and they left, Hamas would pop out and have these firefights. The entire area had been carpet bombed into the Stone Age. There were no tunnels. There were no Hamas. These were starving people, and they used it as an opportunity to shoot at them. And that man, that contractor on the 29th of May, 2025, the intersection of the Salah ad-Din Road and the Ghazi, shot and killed an unarmed Palestinian man who was simply walking home with food with his family. And when the guy says, "Oh, I think you got one," he wasn't talking about a can or a dog. He's talking about a human being.
Yeah.
You got one. And then they cheer and they celebrate. And when I showed that footage, their response to it was, "Oh, I'm sure it was a threat." Well, there's no threat. There is no threat. Well, we'll talk to him. And when they talked to him, he said, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Okay, well, here's the video that shows it, and you can hear it. That's you." "Oh, no, I was shooting in celebration to cheer on the IDF." What? That doesn't make sense in any world. And what I then had a conversation with the lead contractors, mind you, the security contractor, the lead security contractor for the contract. You would think he would have this deep knowledge and understanding of military operations or security operations. No. He'd been out of the Army for about 18 years at that point. And while he was in the Army, he was a logistician. He packed parachutes, and he was kicked out of the Army, forced to retire from the military because he was found guilty by administrative law for having been involved in conspiracy, in lying to and stealing from the U.S. government as a contract representative. And this is the guy they put in charge of the contract, and this is the guy that was the president of the Infidels Motorcycle Club. So you can imagine the conversation with someone like that, trying to explain to them that this is a war crime. And his response to me was like, "No, it's not." I'm like, "Okay, well, you and I are going to sit down and I'm going to show you this book called International Humanitarian Law. And in it are the Geneva Conventions. And the protocols of the Geneva Convention dictate that this is a war crime. So is not providing water, restricting food, only providing food as a quid pro quo, building sites to distribute humanitarian aid in an operational combat area, forcefully displacing the population, and then shooting and putting in harm's way unarmed civilians." And his response to me was, "Well, the IDF don't have to abide by that." Oh, yes, they do. One, they do. And two, Israel is a signatory to the 1952 protocols of the Geneva Convention. They absolutely have to abide by it. And so do we, the United States, whether it's military or an American operating in that capacity. U.S. Code 18, Section 1092. It's a crime. It's a war crime. They committed war crimes, they committed murder, and they're trying to get away with it.
Since this is outside of the military preview because it's a private company, typically you would have the FBI investigate an accusation like that. To your knowledge, has the FBI ever investigated this incident?
No, because the organization has the cover and the screening, if you will, from the CIA, from the ambassador, from the U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee. He provides cover for this. He is aware of it. He is well aware of it. When Ambassador Huckabee and Steve Witkoff, as the special envoy, came into Gaza, shortly after I had revealed these war crimes, President Trump sent them in to, get a pulse on things, check things out. And these two are sitting there at distribution site number 1, and a machine gun fire breaks out in the background. That wasn't Hamas. That wasn't armed Palestinians. That was the IDF shooting at the Palestinians to keep them back. Why? Because the day before, Witkoff and Huckabee were going to make their trip. That whole night, they actually took us off the site that night, observed it overhead with cameras and drones, and area bombed, saturation bombed the entire area around it. And the Palestinians from the night before that came to the site that didn't get food, that were waiting, were cut off. They were blocked. They couldn't go anywhere because there was bombing. So they had to stay. So the next morning, that group was the group that was allowed to come onto the site to get food, and no one else could come. When thousands more Palestinians beyond the Marag corridor saw that these Palestinians were coming towards the site, they thought there was food. They started to come. They opened up with machine gun fire to hold them back. And Witkoff and Huckabee were sitting there hearing this gunfire, recognizing it as, what's going on? Oh, don't worry about that. That happens all the time. Oh, okay. And when they came out, they reported, everything's fine. And on Tucker Carlson just last week, Ambassador Huckabee said there was never an incident where the UG Solutions personnel or the IDF fired at the crowds. There is ample evidence of it. So
Actually, I want to get into that Huckabee interview with Tucker Carlson here in a second. Let's fast forward. So you leave the company, you come back to the United States. There's some allegations there we'll address in a minute. You decide with your wife that you need to start speaking out about this. First, your initial intuition was go to Congress, go to your congressmen, speak to them, tell them what's going on, and let them take it from there. But then your wife was really like the catalyst to get you to start speaking publicly. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that happened?
Well, my wife is also a retired career military officer, served in the 82nd Airborne, deployed to Iraq, combat veteran, served in a profession of honor and integrity. And when I first returned, my wife had known many of the things that I had seen, because I discussed these things with her, and I was morally torn. Like, this is wrong. We can't be doing this. We can't be a part of it. But me leaving isn't going to change anything. So should I stay to try to fix it? And there became a point to where I could not be a part of it anymore. So when I left, when I resigned and came home, I knew that I needed to talk to Congress. I had no intentions of going to the media. So when I got home, I pulled up Google and I wrote, how do you report a war crime? I don't know. And one of the first links that came up was this organization called the Human Rights Watch. So I contacted the Human Rights Watch. They interviewed me. And then through the Human Rights Watch, in partnership with them, they set up meetings on the Capitol. And I went and I spoke to Republicans and Democrats, Senate and the House. And from there is that one spurred this interest in all of the media. I have never gone on a planned media tour. Any of the media that I've been on, it's either been through someone contacting me or like, hey, you should talk to them. I've never, and honestly, when I went on Tucker Carlson the first time, because I was on him twice, the first time I went on Tucker Carlson, I didn't even really know who he was. I thought Tucker Carlson was the guy from Fox News. I didn't even know that he had expanded on this new life of his own podcast. So I had no social media whatsoever at the time. I was not really in tune with the media per se. So it was all a shock to me. And when I was asked, do you want to do interview X or interview Z? I called my wife and I said, they're offering me an opportunity to do these interviews, and they want it to be on the record, like me, my name, my face, my credibility. And I said, I don't think I can do that, but they're offering me the opportunity to just do it anonymously. And my wife said, you have been to war for 25 years. You've gone to war. You have fought in every war that this country has been involved in. Boots on the ground in every war in the last quarter century that this nation has fought. Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Somalia, Yemen, Mogadishu, Yemen, Somalia, Jordan, Lebanon, the Philippines. I've been to places that most Americans don't even know we're fighting war with boots on the ground, like the southern Philippines.
Yeah.
And so when she said this to me, I was like, okay, well, yeah, I know, but I mean, what I saw in Gaza is beyond compared to any of those things. This is different. And she said, that's right. It's different. And there are few witnesses that were there that saw this. There are few witnesses, because my wife had been keeping up with the story by then. She was like, they're bombing schools and churches and mosques, and Palestinians are saying you're murdering us and no one's listening to them. Doctors who are serving in these hospitals, American doctors, Western European doctors that are saying you're murdering people and no one's listening to them. If you're going to speak out, you have to do it on the record. And I said, okay, well, there's risk. And she said, yeah, there is risk. But one day you're going to have to explain to our son in a history book, one way or another. And you were there and you saw it. And if you can't speak to this with your name and on the record and speak to this, then you're a coward. And I didn't marry a coward. So if that's the direction you're taking, then that's not the person I married. So I had to reflect on that and look myself in the mirror and say, yeah, this is not a political stunt. This is not a popularity stunt. This is because there is a genocide. There is indiscriminate killing of women and children. Some of the things that I saw in Gaza that will always burn in my mind, regardless of what anyone says or not. They can't discredit all of it. They can try. But one thing that I can tell you that no one can discredit, as we drove into Rafah on the 24th of May to go to the distribution sites to do a reconnaissance, to get eyes on, to figure out the security structure, how we were going to secure them. As we drove through Rafah, Rafah had been leveled to the ground. Rafah had been eviscerated. And the only way through was these paths through the rubble. There was no more streets and neighborhoods. And in some of the sections that we had to go through, previous to that, there was not any vehicular traffic. It was IDF foot traffic on patrol. So they had to bring in bulldozers ahead of us to make paths for us to get to some of these distribution sites. So as we're doing that and we're in Tal al-Sultan or east of Tal al-Sultan in Rafah proper, and we're stopped, you can hear Palestinians crying out from the rubble, trapped underneath tons of concrete rubble, left for dead, women, children, and men crying out, who were never to be rescued and would die there. And you see a rabid feral dog ripping at a piece of flesh and running off with a child's arm in its mouth because the animals are starving also. And you see an IDF soldier sitting there laughing about that. And the shooting, the indiscriminate shooting at unarmed, starving people. When a father comes to a distribution site who for days has been waiting to get food, who has had to sacrifice and find ways to get food, collect rainwater. And if you collect rainwater in Gaza, you might be killed as a terrorist because that's aiding the enemy to drink water. And when you see a father carry their child and their child starved to death, not shot, not killed, starved to death, and his world is collapsed. He's lost his wife. He's lost most of his family. He's lost a child, or a mother who's dragging a wooden pallet with a rope, and her 3 children are dead on that pallet, wrapped in cloth, because she doesn't know where to bury them. Because if you dare dig a hole in Gaza, you will be bombed. So when you see these things, you realize that it's intentional. It's a genocide. It is a crime against humanity. Is it an infanticide? It is an ecocide. They have destroyed the terrain. And it's all intentional. And the United States is a knowing, enabling partner. And so for that, I'm willing to risk my life to stand forward and say, this is wrong. This is wrong in line with American values. This is wrong in line with the law. This is wrong in line with international law. This violates our laws. This is evil. And the reason they're doing it is because they think that there's no accountability.
So you were talking about how once you start speaking out, you are putting yourself at risk. You did that when you went to the Senate, I believe it was last September, and you spoke out.
The 3rd of September, sir.
Yeah. And when you spoke out, you and Captain Guillebeau were both arrested. How long were you detained, and were you charged with anything, or how did that play out?
So this is where the apparatus of fear attempts to scare Americans. The background to that was Tony Aguilar didn't just wake up one day with a wild ass idea and decide, well, I'm going to go interrupt. Through all of July, all of August, I had spent weeks on end in DC going to as many congressmen as I could knock on doors in a day and talking to them. I've talked to dozens, if not hundreds, of our representatives and senates in total, and staffers. And there is legislation that is sitting in the Capitol to stop providing Israel with offensive munitions like thermobaric bombs. They don't need those. So as I would go to members of Congress and I would ask them, are you aware of what's happening? Not one member of Congress, Democrat, Republican, House, or Senate, not one responded with, oh my God, every one of them. Oh, we know. I mean, we're providing it to them. We know what those things do. We have some of our own representatives that go over there and sign a bomb before it gets dropped.
Most disgraceful thing I've ever seen.
It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. And even against your worst enemy, and believe no one in the Congress, not one person in the Congress, and only about 4 people in the military have been deployed as much as I have in terms of length of time and number of places I've been. So, and I'll stand that record up to anybody. And looking at this and saying that, what do you mean Well, what are we doing about it? And you had a very, very, very slim margin that we're trying. We need voices like yours to bring out the truth because we're just being silenced. Okay, well, I'm here to help. Let's do this. And then you had, I would say, a good portion, not the majority, but a good portion, who said, it's complicated. If I vote this way, my constituents might think this. If I vote this way, my constituents might think that. And then you had a whole lot of members of our Congress with Israeli flags down the hall, Israel first slapped up on the wall. And when you go and talk to them, their answer was Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. They should all die. They sound like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. And I'm like, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with you? This is not right. So one of the conversations I had was with Senator Jim Risch. He is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That's the committee I disrupted. And I went to talk to him. And talking to him is what broke this paradigm for me that I had not yet connected. I sat down one day and I was like, okay, it's not a Democrat thing. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a male thing. It's not a female thing. It's not a white thing. It's not a minority thing. It's not where you're from. What is the common denominator to where you have some people that say it's wrong and we're trying to do something? And that's very few. And then you have about 98% of the rest say everything from it's complicated to no, we should be doing it. And that common denominator is AIPAC. 98% of those in Congress take money from AIPAC or other foreign lobbies. And in my idea, that is traitorous. That is a violation of our Constitution, and that is a violation to the trust of the American people. No one in Congress should take a dime, a penny from any foreign action group, political action group, anyone at all, much less this monstrous AIPAC. So I put that together and I was like, that's really concerning. So when I talked to Jim Risch, I went back for a follow-up because if you recall, September 3rd, it was a Tuesday, was their first day back in session. There was Labor Day weekend. So Monday was off. They were back in session, and that was it just happened to be that Jim Risch's session in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was the first session back in session. And they were coming off of that recess that when the House went into recess, the Senate went into recess because Johnson didn't want to vote on the release of the Epstein files. So they were in that recess in late August. So coming back off of that, so I followed every rule by the book, walked into the Dirksen building, went through security, passed through, got in line to go into the hearing just like any other American can do. And there's a sign on the wall and it says rules of decorum. No talking, no cell phones, no coffee or no beverages, no food, no making noise, all these rules. Now, it's not violating our constitutional rights because they call it decorum. But to silence a citizen from speaking during the open forum of a hearing, regardless if it's in the Congress or in the Senate or the House, is a constitutional right. The loophole in that to enforce it is, well, it's decorum. Okay, I have no problem breaking decorum. What they typically do when you see someone protest and you see them getting dragged out and they're resisting, they use a violation of decorum as the foundational charge to then charge them with a secondary charge like assault or resisting arrest. So I knew that going in. And my body's been beat up. When that guy, I've been shot in my right shoulder, and I had a lot of reconstructive surgery. And when that guy grabbed me and yanked me down, it hurt. It took everything in my power not to push, shove, fight back, or resist, but I didn't, because I knew they would use that against me. So when they tackled me and they dragged me out, I was submissive. They slammed me up against the wall. They handcuffed me. I didn't resist in any way, and they could not charge me. They couldn't charge me with anything. It was all on video, so they knew they couldn't charge me. So what I ended up getting was a violation of decorum. It's a $35 fee. You pay it in cash right out front at the Capitol. It just so happens that the Capitol Police Station is right near the Dirksen on that side of the Capitol Rotunda. So they took us down to the basement. They stripped us down. I got strip searched. They put us in the paddy wagon. My uniform. They took off my uniform, my coat that has, my Purple Heart and my Bronze Star for Valor and my 13 combat bars, and they put it on the floor. And they searched me and stripped me down, and they put me in the paddy wagon, and they took me over to the police station. They didn't book me. I sat there, and they processed me, and I paid my $35 fine, and I got out. And they did all of that show to make Americans scared of exercising their constitutional right. And now what I will tell every American is that every member of Congress, Senate, and the House, all of them have a decorum account that we, the taxpayers, pay into. For some, they use it more than others. For example, when Al Green at the State of the Union got ushered out, he got a decorum charge. Because he's a sitting member of Congress, they just take it out of his congressional account, an account that they all hold. Every member of Congress holds one because violating decorum is expected. It's like jaywalking. It's gonna happen. But that's how they try to scare people. And they didn't scare me because I went and I've paid my fine. And I said, well, I'm going to head back. And they were like, whoa, hold on there, Turbo. I was like, well, there's nothing that keeps me. And they're like, Jim Risch, as the chairman, signed a paper that says can't go into that committee room when that committee is meeting on that topic for 1 year. And I said, okay, so if that committee is meeting in another committee room, I can go? Yes. If there's another committee meeting in that committee room, can I go? Yes. Can I go to any other committee, any other hearing, anywhere in the Senate or the House side, anything? Yeah, absolutely. Can I go to that Senate hearing if that committee in that committee chamber is not doing nominations for ambassadors? Because that's what the topic was. And they were like, yeah. I was like, okay, so this rule is only bound by the exact moment in time that it happened. So I'm going back. So Josephine and I, we went back. We went to the House side. That was the Senate side at the Dirksen. So we went over to the House side and started and listened in on a few more hearings. And then the next day we were back there knocking on doors. So I want that to be an example to every American, is that we have constitutional rights. Right now, this path of tyranny that we're on is not because they're taking anything from us. It's because we're giving it up. We must exercise those rights.
I said it in a video that I posted yesterday. One of my favorite quotes of all time when it comes to democracy is, democracy dies when you stop protesting, because you will never reach the promised land. The government, power, elites, they will always want more control, more power. And if the people give it to them, they will abuse it. Democracy is not something fought for one time. It's something that you have to continuously fight for. I want to get your response to Huckabee, we talked about earlier, and I know that you've already responded on X and a plethora of other podcasts, but because his accusation got tens of millions of views. Now, I want to make sure that your side of this and your response to this gets heard as much as I possibly can push it out. So I want to play this for you and the audience here, and then we'll take a look at your response to it.
You platformed a guy, you had him on your show, Tony Aguilar.
Don't platform anyone.
Well, you interviewed.
Not a liberal,
Tony
so I don't
Aguilar.
platform people.
Okay, you interviewed Tony Aguilar, who claimed that IDF soldiers killed a little boy in his presence. That didn't happen.
Okay.
It did not happen.
I don't know.
Let me give you the story.
If you know whether it happened or not.
Well, I
mean,
can tell you
he
why
was-
I know it didn't happen.
Okay.
Because we found that little boy less than a week later.
All right.
I was involved, heavily involved, in helping to extricate him from Gaza. 4 different countries were involved in getting he and his mother to safety, get them out of there. Tony Aguilar is a liar.
Okay.
Tony Aguilar claimed that he saw an IDF soldier shoot the little boy. He was fired from the
Right.
GHF for cause, and he begged for his job back, and they wouldn't give it back because they didn't want him. And he told them that if they didn't give his job back, that he would burn them down.
Okay.
So he goes out. No, let me finish this
Okay,
because
no,
it's
I've-
important for you to
okay.
understand.
Right.
So this guy then goes out and makes up this story that he witnessed IDF soldiers shooting a little boy.
I don't know that he made it up. He seemed to believe it to me. It's possible he's wrong.
And a little boy that a week later.
So there's a lot to unpack here with this. First of all, his claim is that the boy, and I want you to talk about this boy, I believe his name is Amir. I want you to talk about him and what you witnessed. And then I want you to respond to Ambassador Mike Huckabee's accusation that, one, you were fired for cause, you begged for your job back, which makes absolutely no sense. And then his wild claim that he was personally involved in rescuing this boy. He goes on to say that they had to rescue the boy, otherwise Hamas would have murdered the boy and his mother to prove you right, as though you and Hamas are somehow in this like weird alternate universe cahoots to destroy Israel.
And I'm going to say this directly to Ambassador Mike Huckabee. You're a coward. You should resign. If not, President Trump should fire you. You will see me in court. You will see me in court for defamation, and you will see me, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but you will be sitting on trial in the International Criminal Court with charges brought against you by the International Court of Justice for genocide, for murder. And your little stunt in this interview, all you've done now is implicate yourself directly in the involvement of the kidnapping of a child and the murder of a journalist to cover that up. So that in that situation, it was the 28th of May. It was at distribution site number 3. Distribution site number 3 was a very dangerous site because of the intersection of the Marag corridor and an IDF base that was stationed right at the intersection that goes into this site. And this is a site that I brought to the attention of the leadership in writing in an 11-page document that I have the receipts on, warning the leadership that if we don't adjust or modify the site, at least where the entrance is or its position, people are going to get shot and killed. You're bringing thousands of Palestinians walking through an area right into a combat outpost of the IDF. It's a bad tactical decision. And they told me, well, this is how we're going to do it. I said, okay. On the 28th of May, this young boy was on the site. Many of the young children weren't able to get food in like the boxes or get the food kits. They picked up scraps. They picked up what was left. They were often abandoned. And this young little boy, his name was Amir. His name was Amir because that's what he said his name was. I didn't make that name up. I didn't just say, what's your name? And he showed me an ID. I didn't pat him down and search for an ID or a passport. He said his name was Amir. His name was Amir, which is, I've come to find out now, is very common in Gaza. It's like Tony or Bill. So he came up and he had these little parcels of food in his hand, and he wasn't begging for food. He came to thank us. He was thankful. And he kissed our hands. The contractor next to me, he kissed his hand. He came to me. I put my hand on him. He kissed my hand. He thanked us both. And as he walked away with the crowd, The IDF called over the radio to say all of the Palestinians, they need to get off the site. They're closing the site, meaning they're gonna close the outer gates. So UG Solutions personnel start pepper spraying, stun grenade throwing, tear gas, the works. And as they're getting pushed out, when you're a group of children or mothers, and you start getting tear gassed and hit with stun grenades and batoned, well, you panic and you run. And that's what they did. That position of the machine gun, of the tank that has a coaxial machine gun that was positioned right outside the site, had a berm in front of it. That machine gun was shooting into the intersection to keep the Palestinians that had left going west. So none of them wandered east. They were shooting into the intersection as a means of keeping the crowd west. And this little group of children and women who were running you can't see those bullets flying through the air, ran into this wall of gunfire. And not one time did I ever say that an IDF soldier was sitting there behind a machine gun just killing children. They were shooting into the crowd like they'd done over and over and over again. And this time, because the IDF from where they were shooting couldn't see the people exiting the site because of the berm, and the people exiting the site couldn't see where those bullets were going, the worst of the worst happened. And that's not the first time it happened, and it wouldn't be the last time it happened. And in that incident, that young boy was gunned down and killed. And then through other testimony from another contractor who saw what I saw, who was a truck driver, an Australian who's also been on CBS, who testified to this, he was then buried in a shallow grave by the bulldozers when they came through after the distribution. So Huckabee was not there. None of the UGS leadership were there. They were all back at the operations center. I was there. I videoed that young boy. There's video taken of that young boy and that group being shot at, and that young boy on the ground dying and breathing his last breaths. So if he miraculously survived, I mean, was I able to go out there and check for death and give him a time of death? No. But if that young boy survived, and the young boy they're saying is him, well, what happened to the bullet wounds? Why is his jawline completely different? Why is his hairline completely different? Why are his eyes a different color? Why are the shape of his ears different? Why is he a different height? All of these things. And they came out with that story on September 4th, the day after I got arrested in Congress for bringing out this genocide. They released this story on September 4th. We found Amir. Okay. Can I talk to him? Can anybody talk to him? Can a reporter talk to him? Oh, no, he's not in the country anymore. Well, that was a bold-faced lie, because Amir was kept in the country until the ceasefire. They had him living in a tent at Distribution Site 3, living in a tent. They didn't get him out of Gaza. When the ceasefire broke, they got him out, and they paid his claimed mother, his claimed family, to get them out of Gaza, and they sent them to Egypt. And that boy that they showcased, they said his name is Aboud. That may very well be. That boy that they showcased, that boy that they said, here's Amir, his name may very well be Aboud. He is not Amir. They don't look alike. They don't have the same features. That young boy was killed. And even if he wasn't, what about all the other thousands of children that have been killed by bombs and machine guns and starvation? What about Hind Rajab that was shot 300 in car and her entire family was killed, and the IDF denied that for weeks until it was so obvious you couldn't deny it? What about all these women and children and journalists that have been killed? And here's what brings me great pause, of which I will not stop until justice is served. Mohammed Salama was a reporter for the Middle East Eye. He was in Gaza. He was aware of this story. An individual that was also there, who crawled out from the gunfire and survived, after he heard my story, went to Mohammed Salama to show him. And Mohammed Salama, Middle East Eye reporter, and the man he was talking to were detained on site number 3 by UG Solutions, and then questioned, interrogated by interrogators from the CIA. UG Solutions contractors securing each one of the sites had like one of these operations rooms, a locked room. And then that was on the 23rd of August. And then on the 25th of August, if you go back and you watch the Nasser Hospital double tap strike, there's a reporter standing out on the balcony when that tank round slams into that hospital and blows it up. That is Mohammed Salama. He was targeted and he was killed. He was targeted and he was killed to bury that story. Hamas had nothing to do with it. Hamas wouldn't have killed the boy just to make their story right. The boy is dead. And Mike Huckabee has now made himself an accomplice. He said himself, I was involved in this operation. He was involved. He was involved in the cover-up. He was involved in the interrogation of a reporter. He was involved in the kidnapping and then forced evacuation, extradition, if you will, of a child that wasn't Amir. And in doing so, he lied to the American people about it. But that child that they said, oh, we got him out of there, they didn't. Mike Huckabee says, days later. Not true. That incident happened on the 28th of May. I've been talking about that from that day until I came home. And GHF didn't announce it until September 4th. Not days, months later.
So
and it wasn't the same boy.
His accusation is that they fired you, you didn't leave, and that you begged for your job back, which just doesn't add up. How does that make you feel, and what response do you have to that?
So back to the, I went on to Breaking Points in early July and was asked the same questions because they made that accusation months and months ago. This is not a new accusation. And the reason it went quiet is because I outright disproved that lie by showing the receipts. My termination letter. On the 12th of June, I wrote my termination letter at 7:38 in the morning, printed it out. A few minutes later, I have the metadata off of the computer that I wrote it and then printed it from that shows the day it was written and printed. And on the 13th of June, I handed it to the guy in charge and I said, I will stay until the 14th. So whoever's taking over for me can take all of the operation stuff, all the convoy planner, the pallet load planner, the fuel matrix, all these things that we had. And on the 14th, the 12-day war started and everything was shut down. Nobody was going into Gaza. No operations were being done. And the airport was closed and the borders were closed. No one could leave. So in that time that I was there, the CEO, Nathan Potter, the CEO of UG Solutions, called me on the night of the 14th and asked, what would it take for you to stay? And I said, have you not been made aware of all of these instances and things that I've been complaining about? Because I've been putting it in my daily report. No, tell me. So we had a 4-hour conversation and he was floored. He was shocked. And he said, stay. Let's figure out a way to incorporate you back in so we can fix these things. And I said, these are things you can't fix. They're ingrained, they're intentional. He had never seen the contract. He is the operations officer of UG Solutions and he had never seen the contract. So on the 26th of June, I had enough. An Iranian ballistic missile blew up, hit the side of the hotel that we were staying in Beersheba. I was in Beersheba. I was not in Ashdod or Tel Aviv with the rest of them. I was in Beersheba. And I said, okay, Tony's not going to die from an Iranian ballistic missile. I'm out. And the only way to get out was to cross the Jordanian border through Jericho and get to Amman and fly out of there. But before I left, the chief operations officer sent me this letter that I provided the evidence to over and over and over again to everyone. I'm an open book. And this is what that letter says to me in writing, signed by Nathan Potter, Chief Operations Officer of UG Solutions. Dear Tony, as your engagement with UG Solutions concludes, we extend our heartfelt gratitude for your contributions to our mission in Israel and Gaza. We appreciate your flexibility and adaptability throughout this deployment and your willingness to support the mission above and beyond in a variety of ways. While your current assignment ends, please let us know If you are interested in future opportunities in working with UG Solutions, we would love to have you back on the team.
That doesn't
Does that sound
like
like someone that was fired?
yeah.
And in this letter, they also acknowledge investigation into the alleged misconduct that I reported. Since you reported your concerns on May 28th through June 14th regarding alleged inappropriate behavior by independent contractors, we have initiated a thorough investigation. How much of that investigation have anyone seen? Zero. So, much like the playbook out of this administration, if you're exercising your constitutional rights and ICE shoots you in the face 3 times, you're a domestic terrorist. If you're an ICU nurse that works at the VA and you're simply exercising your constitutional right to be at a location and they shoot you in the back of the head and they kill you, well, you're a domestic terrorist. Me, 25 years of service. So what I will tell again, I will wrap this sandwich of that story up back to Huckabee directly. And I hope you're listening, Mike. You're a coward. I served this country for 25 years in uniform, boots on the ground in every war, leading America's soldiers. The soldiers that you put at risk with your comment of Israel can have it all from the Euphrates to the Nile. You are a traitor. You are a coward, and you are a liar. And you have not seen the last of me. I'm glad you know my name, because you will hear it again.
So as we finish up here today, what's next for you? I know you've been doing a lot of, screaming at the rooftops to try and get people to understand what's happening. But that only goes so far. I heard a little rumor from a birdie in my ear saying that there's a potential congressional run. Is that true? And can you elaborate on that?
I'm running for the North Carolina District 13 for U.S. Congress. I will win. The incumbent is a millionaire lawyer who never served a day of his life in government service, who lives in a $2.2 million mansion and doesn't even live in the district he represents. He is an AIPAC recipient, and he is Israel first. And America is tired of that. I'm running. Not running Democrat, not running Republican, running Green, and I'm not taking any money from any political action committee. Not just AIPAC, no political action committees, no lobbyists, no special interest groups, no one from the military-industrial complex. I'm only taking money from grassroots donations because you don't need money to win. You need the truth and the ability to stand on, to do what you say. So, though you do need a certain amount of money for campaign expenditures and a staff, America is seeing the truth. I'm very confident that I will win this election and that I will represent the 13th district of North Carolina in Congress. And I am making a pledge now. I will not only not take money from any interest group, political action committee, lobbyists, or investors. I myself, I have no investments in the stock market and bonds. I have no Roth IRAs. I have no money invested in any government or military-industrial complex investments. Why does that matter? Because in the Constitution, we have the Emoluments Clause. And someone serving in office, whether you're the president or a representative, should not profit off of the trust of the American people. You shouldn't have to worry about having an insider trading rule because there even shouldn't be the opportunity for it to happen. Why do so many congressmen not sign on to block the bombs? Because they're okay with children being blown to pieces? No. Because if you block the bombs, well then Raytheon that makes the nose cone diverting kit, they lose a lot of business. General Dynamics loses a lot of business. Google and Amazon lose a lot of business because they make some of the software that goes into the guidance of those munitions. So you can't tell me that there's not a congressman sitting there and thinking, if I sign on to this legislation, that might hurt me directly. And you don't have to have a bit of insider trading. It's just stocks and bonds. So I believe that serving in Congress is a selfless service calling. You are there to serve the people, not the other way around. And much like I learned in my years of being a military officer, when in a position as a representative, you never put yourself in a position, even if there's possibility that you can take advantage of those that you serve.
Agreed. I think every member of Congress and the president should fully divest from any investments in any companies, whether it's public or private, while you are serving. You are
Absolutely.
there 100% to serve the people. You get paid adequately for doing
Yes.
so while you're there. And if you're going there because you want to make more millions or become a millionaire, then you shouldn't be there because that's not the job. If you want to do
That's
that,
right.
go build a business and become a millionaire. Don't do it off the dime of US taxpayers. And
Millionaires and billionaires do not belong in Congress.
exactly. So how do people support you? I know you're 100% grassroots supported. Do you have a website up now to accept donations? Do you have staff members? Do you have volunteers yet? If somebody want to come and volunteer for your campaign, how do they do that?
Yes. So at AguilarForUSCongress.com, all spelled out, all one word, not the number 4, but spelled out FOR. Aguilar for U.S. Congress. When you go there, you'll find my website that has my vision, my mission statement, our objectives. But then you can also find to donate, to volunteer, or to also assist with the social media. And by I mean not being like a social media marketing expert, just spreading the word. If one person tells 5 people and those 5 people tell 5 people and the word spreads, this can spread like fire for people to say, oh, wow, there's someone running that cares about the American people, who actually lives in the district and isn't a millionaire, who served his country. Yeah, I think that's somebody I want to support. So donations, huge. That's great. Volunteering, phone banking, knocking on doors, that's on there to sign up to do. That's needed. Now that the general elections are on the 5th, so we'll see who is the Democrat and who is the Republican to come from that. But I'm already on the ballot. I'm already on the ballot. No one's running against me in the Green Party. So I'm on the ballot, America. Not a sign-in, not a petition, not a write-in, on the ballot. So after March 3rd, this thing's going to go into hyperdrive, and we're going to be out town halls, knocking on doors. I need volunteers. I need help. I need support. If you're not in my district or in North Carolina, spread on social media. Make it viral. Interviews like this, make it viral. If you are in my district, vote. Get out there and vote.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I just want to say it has been such an honor to have such a decorated veteran here, especially this issue within our Congress and our government, corporations. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody that's watching, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, for coming on today. Best of wishes for you in your campaign. We definitely need you in Congress. If I lived in North Carolina, in your district, I would certainly vote for you. You earn my vote just by being a veteran who's willing to speak the truth. That I think that's the type of service that we need in government. And we just hope that you stay safe out there and keep fighting the good fight. I know for all the Palestinians, I have a lot of Palestinian friends. They admire you so much for risking everything to come out and tell the truth. And we need more people. So encourage them to come out with it and speak the truth.
As I like to say in the military, when you're the number 1 man in the door, I've kicked in the door so others can follow. I'll take the heat. It's on me. I'm the one they want to target. So if more people come, it supports that effort. So I've already broken the paradigm. So if you know and you've seen it, and I know because I get emails and I get texts from guys that serve down there that have burner phone numbers or Proton emails. They're like, hey man, I saw the same stuff, man. Thanks for speaking out. I know you're out there. You've seen what I've seen. There were other contractors that resigned before I did because of what we saw. Say something. The front line of humanity runs through Gaza, and Palestinians are on that front line, surviving and staying and fighting for their lives, and humanity watches. That's our future. And if we don't start telling the truth and we don't start stepping up for what's right, believe you me, America, we are all next.
Yeah. Exactly. Again, thank you, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, for everything that you're doing. And we'll definitely love to have you back on the program anytime in the future to discuss, especially once you win that victory and you're off to your new job in Congress, supporting and speaking for the truth.
Would love to. Thank you so much. It's been a great interview, and all my best to you and the family, and we will talk soon.
Absolutely. Guys, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share this with everybody that you know. This is a message
Everybody.
too important to be buried. Until next time, stay safe, stay free.